At this point, I'm not confident that the video actually does the full countdown because I don't think I've seen it happen once on our YouTube. That is just for our YouTube users, so we apologize that we come in at like 9 seconds left or 20 seconds left for whatever reason. Something we're trying to work out with the streaming service, I
Well,
guess.
it's so interesting too because we see it on our end count all the way down. Like it has the full 30 seconds. With that one, man, I don't know where they are stashed in my closet, but I should have brought my Eclipse glasses back out and just
Yeah.
started the episode like that. So
Well, the Eclipse is not my favorite video intro, but I like to change it up each and every time. So, it's a little different. You never know what you're gonna get. But we are gonna talk. I feel like for like the third week in a row, we're talking a little bit of March Madness because we're officially done. I mean, do you have any crazy takeaways from overall March Madness? I mean, I don't necessarily, other than the last game surprised me. I went to bed at halftime thinking it was over, and North Carolina totally blew it.
well, I think that's we talked about this in text, but I think that's the craziest part of the national championship. So you and I had complete opposite experiences. You went to bed at the first half with Carolina cooking. I just turned the game on with like 7 minutes left, and I think it was tied in the 50. It was somewhere in the 50s or something. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's cool. Like, good for Kansas, good for North Carolina. It was a fun ending. Shout out to Kansas winning the national championship. I believe it's their fourth in school history.
Cool.
Second for Bill Self as a coach, first one since 2008 with Mario Chalmers. Number one seed this year, looking like a number one seed, obviously winning the game 72-69. Shout out to McCormick, got 2 buckets late. They went to him specifically, and he was able to get it done. Shout out to Carolina as well. North Carolina was an 8 seed this year. I know North Carolina is obviously a traditional basketball powerhouse in their own right, a multi-time national champion. Dealt with a lot of injuries, guys playing through injuries. So shout out to them, putting up a real good fight. But in the end of the day, Kansas looked like the best team in this tournament, and they won. So,
Yeah.
not really a big. I don't have any grand takeaways from that. Like Kansas is one of the best teams all year, and I
Well,
think one that a lot of people picked to win.
I know it got to like halftime, and I don't know if it was the reporter or the halftime show was essentially talking about how no team has come back from this large of a deficit and blah, 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 blah. And I was just like, I was laying on the couch and I was, I'm like half asleep, in and out of being awake. And I was like, all right, well, if ain't nobody come back from, this deficit, then I'm just going to go to bed. And then I woke up and I look at my phone and it's like, they won. I was like, oh, I missed it. I missed a good one. But I will tell you, I slept like a baby. I was so tired. So
Listen, a good night's sleep is worth everything sometimes. And
all I'm saying, we talk about this. This is not the first time this has come up on the podcast, but maybe we should consider moving the time of those games up a little for our
oh my god, yeah,
the East Coast.
it was late. It ended closer to midnight, and I'm usually not up that late. But yeah, it ended really, really late.
I went to bed at halftime, and it was probably 10:30.
Yeah, I would definitely love again, East Coast biased a little bit, but I'm just saying I would love an early starter time because the West Coast people can still watch it. Like it starts at 4 o'clock. It's not like it's starting at 9 a.m. or something like that.
Yeah.
The only people who would maybe get, maybe Hawaii gets the short end of the stick here, but when did we change everything around Hawaii? No offense, Hawaii.
Right. It's all right. We love you, Hawaii. But no, seriously, like, you can just watch it at work if you're on the West Coast. Watch it on the last hour of work or something.
Right, exactly. And so the other big news that came down this week off the court, as of course we're getting close here to the end of the regular season and the last couple of games, but the Hall of Fame announcing the 2022 class, highlighted by Manu Ginobili and Tim Hardaway on the player front, Bob Huggins on the college basketball front, legendary West Virginia coach, George Karl on the NBA coaching front, and then Hugh Evans, the NBA ref, got in. On the women's side, Lindsay Whalen got in, Swin Cash got in, and Marianne Stanley got in as well. She on the coaching front. But again, player-wise, Manu Ginobili and Tim Hardaway, the two names that I think most people are going to recognize here. I remember you saying before we started this that you saw people surprised that Manu Ginobili got in on his first time, and I guess I'm confused by that. I feel like Manu Ginobili was an easy decision for the Hall of Fame. No?
Well, I mean, I agree with you. I'm trying to find, I think it was a tweet, and it happened, it was like a day ago, so good luck finding it again on on Twitter. But yeah, I mean, I'm not necessarily, I'm like trying to think of what angle they would take with that, and I can't find one.
Well, the thing to remember with the Basketball Hall of Fame in particular, too, is that this is an entire basketball hall. Like, this isn't an NBA exclusive thing. That's why we're mentioning these women getting in. That's why we're mentioning Bob Huggins, who's never coached in the pros, getting in.
Here it is.
And so with Manu Ginobili, not only for obviously his impact with the Spurs, what he meant as a sixth man coming off the bench, how he, really just thrived in that role, a multi-time champion, what he did for Argentina as well in the Olympics, winning that gold medal in 2004, obviously upsetting the United States. He has as many accolades on that front as he does in the Spurs front. So I think it's a double whammy for Manu that made it obvious.
I just found the audio. It's from Fox Sports Radio, so I'm gonna pull it up here. We can hear what Ben had to say if I can get it to load. Give me 1 second. Sorry for the podcast people. We'll be there in just a moment. If I can get it to go. Oh, I got the wrong freaking thing. Oh, this is a disaster. Hold on.
Just wrong, completely wrong tweet?
No, it's the right tweet. I just clicked the wrong link. It's so dumb that it's not dumb, but it is dumb. I apologize. Okay. We're back on track. Here it is. So, all right, let me pause it and get this going again. Volume up. Here we go.
So let us discuss the question. Did the Hall of Fame make a mistake honoring Manu Ginobili? So, yeah, I'm nodding my head yes here. You can't see me because we're on radio. I'm nodding my head yes. I've got generic brand, Storehouse, and Storm Clouds. And we will put all of this together and make the Baba Ganoush. We're going to make the Baba Ganoush. Now, first of all.
Oh, it's 6 minutes long. We're not going to sit through 6 minutes.
I was going to say, you pulled that video up, and I was like, are we really about to sit through 6 minutes of this? I was like, this is not his podcast. Get this guy out of here. He's completely wrong on top of that.
Yeah, so I guess his theory is that they have low standards on admission for the Hall of Fame. I thought it was going to be like, who posts a 6-minute video to Twitter?
Yeah, that's number one. Number two, yeah, I don't. I no, it doesn't have too low of a standards of admissions. I mean, if anything, I guess maybe in the sense that the thought there is because it's a greater than NBA Hall of Fame. Like Tony Kukoc is in the Hall of Fame, for example, but that plays to the whole international game as well. It plays to the overall, just it being a basketball Hall of Fame. This isn't an NBA Hall of Fame. I don't know. I mean, I don't think it's too low personally. I think with baseball, for example, baseball definitely is too low. I think there's been a couple questionable ones over there, but yeah, I don't think Manu Ginobili. Maybe that would be the argument: is that he's not a first-time ballot guy, is that he's not in that class of the league. But what does that mean? That's stupid. If they're a Hall of Famer, then they're a Hall of Famer, or they're not.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it too is like with the Hall of Fame for he was a part of 4 NBA title teams. I think if you take into account the Olympics as well, like that right there is enough. Like we don't need to go any deeper, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's just he's well-rounded on that front, so no arguments there. Shout out Tim Hardaway as well, crossover legend in the 90s, had a real solid NBA career. Good to see him finally honored. Obviously, most significant with the Heat, but he was all over the league for quite a while. Welcome, everybody, to the Driving Dish NBA podcast. My name is Kevin Rayfuse. Joining me, as always, my co-host, Justin Kuzart.
Oh, no, it's right here. I'm all over the place. Guess I've been dunking Oreo for longer than I remember. Hashtag ad.
So we got a 6-minute Fox Sports Radio video on here, and we got an Oreo ad already.
Listen, we are at a C- right now, and I apologize.
Who do we got? Who's dunking Oreo? Who's getting paid by Oreo?
Come on.
I have no idea, actually.
Giannis.
Oh, is Giannis getting paid by Oreo?
He posted an ad. He finally made it happen.
I mean, that's good. Hey, listen, if I were going to be an NBA player, Oreo would be among the top endorsements. And if Oreo wants to endorse the podcast, that would be 100% wonderful. They're real good. The flavors are
For
real
me,
good.
dude,
Too.
it'd be those Belvita breakfast biscuits, those blueberry ones.
Oh yeah, those are great. I would endorse those right there with you. Dude, the first time I had them was at Summer League here in Orlando back in the day. RIP Orlando Summer League. They're incredible. And the other flavors aren't quite as good, but those blueberry ones, they're next level. I completely agree with you there.
And low key, if you like, I like them crunchy, right? That's the best way in my opinion. But if you do dip them in your coffee, it makes them a little soggy, and they're pretty dang good.
I know people do that with the biscotti cookies, which are also really good. I'm a big biscotti guy. They're supposed to be good in your coffee. Leave us a review on iTunes, good or bad. We'll read them on the podcast. If you're not an Apple user, Google Play Store, Spreaker, Spotify, TuneIn, Player FM, Amazon Music, anywhere else that I may have forgot to mention that hosts podcasts, we are definitely there.
Yep, and just search Drive and Dish NBA on Google if you can't find us in your podcasting app, and we'll probably be there as well. You can also find us on YouTube, and I do believe we got our 35th subscriber. I'm trying to see if we have a name. It doesn't look like we got a name with the subscription, but we appreciate it. So we are looking for number 36 now.
Yeah, and I mean, number 36 of everybody on the list, I mean, it's got to be Rasheed Wallace, right? I think he's without a doubt the best player who wore 36. Wore it for 4 years as a Piston. Also wore it for 1 year as a Hawk and 1 year on the Knicks. Shaq did wear 36 while he was playing on the Celtics, but again, well past his prime by that point. Who
Dario?
else got here? Yeah, Dario, but only for the Timberwolves for that little bit. Dave Cowens is a Hall of Famer. He wore it with the Bucks for 1 year. Marcus Smart for sure is number 2. I think Rasheed Wallace is number 1, and then Marcus Smart is for sure number 2. So, you can be. We've had to run a pretty good numbers because I mean, Sheed's not as maybe as prolific as KD or somebody who was on 34. Your myriad of choices there. Same with 33 as well. But be the Rasheed Wallace, be the Marcus Smart of our YouTube subscribers, and watch the video form of the podcast on YouTube. And now a word from our sponsors.
Well, against all the odds, the Spurs might be one of the hotter teams in the NBA right now. They had a gauntlet to go through, and they had some pretty big wins. And, of course, that clinches them the play-in tournament over the Los Angeles Lakers. So the NBA is on complete fire right now because LeBron James will be missing the playoffs officially. And it's not even like missing the playoffs because you lost in the play-in tournament. It's like you're not even in the play-in tournament, which I think there's a level of that to take into account here. Something that I thought was interesting, in January, there was a headline from ESPN that had the Heat and the Lakers as quote unquote dangerous loomers in the NBA. Well, Miami, I mean, I think they're going to end it in the first place. I don't think they can. I'll have to check that out. But I think they're going to end first.
They can get caught, but it would take them going 0-3, and it would take everybody, like whoever's in second, whether it's Boston or whether it's Milwaukee, winning out. So pending something weird or drastic happening, Miami is going to be the number 1 seed.
So ESPN was 50-50 on that.
Well, I wouldn't even call them a loomer. That's kind of weird. It feels weird calling a number 1 seed a loomer.
Well, they weren't back in January, were they? They didn't have the greatest record in January. They're probably like a 6th seed.
I'd have to check. I don't feel like they were ever that low. Maybe I'm completely off there, but I mean, they won 52 games. No, that's not true. Never mind. You'll have a couple teams in the East who will probably get over that 50-game hump. Between Boston, between Milwaukee, between Philly, Toronto could be just short of it if they end up going out and winning the rest of the way. In the Western Conference, that 50-game. Well, you got the Suns have 60. They're going to be the only ones to have 60. They're well over everybody at 63. Memphis and Golden State have already broken 50. Golden State at 50 right now. Dallas is at 49. They're up on Detroit right now. They're playing them tonight. Doesn't look like Utah or Denver can get there. They'd have to win out the rest of the way. Utah, does have Oklahoma City tonight. But no, going back to the Lakers, I mean, this is I mean, seeding wise, overall here in the last week, and I guess I want to apologize because I had my weeks completely off and was a little miscalculated last week in terms of timeline. So we got a couple left here. But in terms of, we're just really looking for seeding for a couple things at this point. And we'll get to that in a little bit. We, of course, want to, like Justin said, you got to start with the Lakers because, I mean, this is an unmitigated disaster. There's no way around it. I mean, you're in a situation where LeBron James could win the scoring title this year, averaging 30 points a game. You know, I know Anthony Davis has missed significant time. I know Russell Westbrook has, you know, probably not been the only issue, but pretty much everything that could have gone wrong for the Lakers went wrong this year. And again, it all goes back to the fact that there's not really an easy way to fix it. No one's going to take that Russ contract when he opts in for another year. There's no one. You don't really have any draft capital. And on top of that, insult to injury, with the Lakers missing the playoffs, that Pelicans pick is now going to be a top 10. You know, all that coming via the Anthony Davis trade. This is also a crazy scenario where the Lakers have had LeBron James for 4 years. And yes, of course, they won the title. And then that's a big, you know, at the end of the day, that's all that matters. You won a title during LeBron James' tenure, and that should mean everything when people look at it as a whole. You've also missed the playoffs twice with LeBron James. Like, that has never happened anywhere.
If is there a point where, say, the top 10 pick that the Pelicans get, Zion comes back. I mean, the Pelicans look like they're a decent team, and if you get your star in Zion and he's cooking, and you get a top 10 pick and he's cooking, is there a point where we're down the line and we're like, oh, dang, the Pelicans, although it was delayed, might have won this trade?
I wouldn't say so. I think it's a mutual win. I don't think the Lakers are ever going to lose this trade because they won a title. Like, at the end of the day, regardless of, even if Anthony Davis isn't, because there are valid questions with the Lakers. Like, Anthony Davis was supposed to be the guy. This was supposed to be a situation where LeBron James could take the back seat a little bit potentially for a lot of the season. And instead, it hasn't been that at all. We've had to see LeBron dominate and be the guy to have them anywhere remotely close. They gave all their depth away. They didn't probably land the third star that they wanted to. Obviously, Westbrook just hasn't been able to be that. They don't have the draft capital or the young players really to swing any sort of deal. I mean, the only way to radically remake this roster is to trade LeBron James or trade Anthony Davis. I mean, and that's not exactly what you had in mind when these two paired up. Now, again, they won a title. The Lakers will never lose that trade because you won a title with LeBron James and Anthony Davis. But for the Pelicans, yeah, absolutely. There are plenty of scenarios where you can win this trade, given the picks that you have, given the fact that Brandon Ingram is a good player. You know, obviously Lonzo's not there anymore. I think Lonzo's a great player, and we're going to talk about him a little more, unfortunately, in Ballin' and Fallin' later. But yeah, no, for the Pelicans, there's definitely ways that you can swing this as a win. And for them right now, I don't think Zion is going to play this year. I appreciate the optimism from his stepfather. I don't see why, if I'm the Pelicans, I would rush Zion back at all. As well as they're playing, there's also a very real chance that they lose in the play-in game. That could happen here as well. So there may not even be that much basketball left for them to play. But yeah, for a franchise that was pretty down in the dumps for, I would say, 3/4 of the season, ever since the trade deadline, and again, credit to CJ McCollum for that spark, credit to the coaching job that Willie Green has done, but they've been on a tear recently, and it's this went from a pretty much a disaster to, I would actually view this as a success right now. Them getting into the playoff game and building that momentum, add another top 10 pick, add hopefully a healthy Zion Williamson back in the lineup, and all of a sudden that gumbo in New Orleans looks a whole lot better.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is I think there could be some really cool potential and quick swing potential from the Pelicans. Like we could be at this point next year, like, damn, they are the most improved team in the NBA. And it won't be, it shouldn't be that surprising, because if we're looking at it now before it's happening, we're like, okay, well, look at what they did in this trade, or right before the trade deadline. They don't have Zion. They get him back, and now they have a top 10 pick. So that could be huge for them. So, yeah, I mean, and maybe they leverage that pick to get somebody. I don't know. We'll get down the line when we get there. But even so, that could be a really cool part of it. Now, the other side of it, I think it's a really cool storyline for the Spurs as well. And I think hats off to them for essentially clutching up in a way.
Yeah, I mean, they did their jobs. Like, look, they had to win a bunch of meaningful games down the stretch. They hung tough the entire season. And they won games that they needed to get in. That's the thing. Like, they've got a substantial lead on the Lakers right now. And I know LeBron has missed these last couple of games, but Yeah, no, credit to Pop, obviously. What else is there to say about Pop and how great he is? Dejounte Murray's emergence to an all-star level, kind of a franchise guy level, has been the big story there this year. And now they've given themselves a chance. Again, this is a one-game playoff. I don't think they're going to beat the Pelicans, honestly, if I was going to pick. But they sure, that's a toss-up to me. That's one of those 51-49 type games. Could go either way. And again, credit to themselves for putting themselves in a position, because even post-trade deadline, they traded, namely Derek White, a valuable player at the deadline, and have done well with the return. Josh Richardson has been huge for them down the stretch. And now, again, they're going to have a playoff play-in game here against New Orleans. We're going to do a full play-in preview on our next episode. But it is a little more set in the Western Conference. We know we're going to get Pelicans Spurs as the 9-10 game. We know the Clippers are going to be the 8. It looks like Minnesota, Denver, as of recording this, has a 2-game lead on Minnesota with 3 to go. Obviously, if Denver goes 0-3 and Minnesota wins out, they can jump them and get into that 6th spot. But, Denver's magic number is 1. I do think they're going to clinch. And so Minnesota at that point would play the Clippers, and then the winner of that game, 7-8, or losers 7-8, will play the winner of that Pelicans Spurs game. Should be pretty fun. Eastern Conference, same sort of deal. The play-in is locked up at this point in terms of what teams it's going to be. It'll be the Cavs, the Nets, the Hawks, and the Hornets. Now the seeding there obviously is a lot different. The Cavs have a 1.5-game lead as of recording this, but that all can change very, very quickly. And then the East, a little more interesting in terms of overall seeding as well. 5 and 6 between Toronto and Chicago is still up for grabs. 2 through 4 is completely up for grabs right now with 3 to play. The only thing pretty much locked in there is Miami. Miami is virtually locked in at 1, again, pending a collapse. And then the West just has obviously way more locked in. Phoenix is locked into 1. Memphis is locked into 2. 3 and 4 could still switch up between the Warriors and the Mavs, and then 5 and 6 as well between the Jazz and the Nuggets. But either way, we'll have the kind of the full play-in preview and then a round 1 preview. Stay tuned for that coming up here in a little bit. I see people calling real quick before we go to Ballin' and Fallin'. I see people calling this Lakers team as the biggest disappointment in NBA history. That feels so reactionary.
Yeah. Well, so I had a few people mention that to me in the hallway today, and here was my response. I understand it was hyped up to be this amazing team, but I feel like when they got Westbrook, we were all like, oh, this isn't going to work. I know on this podcast, we were like, it isn't going to work.
Yeah, you saw the thinking about how it could, but we were pretty low on it. Yeah.
Right. So how, in my mind, can it land number 1 on most disappointing Lakers team when we kind of expected them to not be great? Now, I don't know if I expected them to miss the playoffs and the play-in tournament completely. So there's a little bit of disappointment in that, but I didn't think they were going to be in the top 4 or 5.
I think the level of disappointment is extreme just because they missed a play-in tournament. That is crazy that a team with LeBron James and Anthony Davis on it did not make the play-in tournament. That is bananas.
I agree.
Biggest disappointment ever, though. People are saying in NBA history, and let alone Lakers teams. I think even more recently, go back to 2012 when they signed Dwight Howard and brought Steve Nash in and had Kobe as well. Now, granted, that team went further than this Lakers team did. They made the playoffs. And Kobe also tore his Achilles at the end of that year, so that's worth mentioning as well. But that team was that was the one with the Sports Illustrated cover. There was a lot of fun or hype going into that Lakers team, and it was pretty disappointing.
Wasn't that the year, though, that Chris Paul was supposed to go, and the NBA kind of blocked it?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, that's the NBA's fault.
Yeah, there are a lot of people who would say that. There are plenty of people who think Chris Paul would have a ring. Kobe obviously could be maybe at 6, pushing for Jordan a little bit there.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was, man, that is one of those things I wish we had the podcast for. We missed that by just only about 2 years, but because that's bananas. There's been nothing like that since, even really anything close like that since.
Yeah.
All right, who's balling, who's falling? Our NBA version of the stock market. We always like to start with the good before the bad. Justin, I got to be honest, I was going to let you go first, but this kind of segues really well because my balling is Chris Paul this week. Chris Paul with and again, missed a little bit of time this year, but with Phoenix, they've won 63 games, the most in franchise history. And again, that's a record that could keep rising here with a couple games left. Chris Paul has now had 4 teams set their franchise records and wins with him on them. In 2008, the Hornets went 56-26, a franchise record. In 2014, the Clippers went 57-25, a franchise record. And the Rockets in 2018 went 65-17. So again, now the 4th time with Phoenix, just again, added to the resume of a legend.
No, I think that's going to be a huge if. Okay, we'll put a big if, because at this point this year, if the Suns don't win it, well, there's a whole nother level of disappointment with the Suns. But if he doesn't get a ring, if he were to retire, without a ring, I think that stat right there is a huge plus on the side of him being an all-time great, and that argument that he'll be able to have when somebody says, oh, but he doesn't have a ring, or if somebody says he doesn't have a ring. Now, depending on how things go, if they don't go up against the 76ers in the finals, I'll probably be rooting for him to get a ring. So here we are.
I mean, certainly the window is open. And yeah. I mean, that's the thing is, like, people, especially when he left Houston, wondered if the window was open just because of age. And it's obviously wide open. They got to the finals last year. Devin Booker, I think it was earlier this week in an interview, was saying, no, we don't need any motivation. Losing in the finals last year was all they needed. And they're right. I mean, if they're healthy, look, they're the team to beat in the Western Conference. Again, they have 63 wins right now. Nobody in the NBA has 60, let alone 63.
Yeah.
To me, they're the overwhelming favorites. Yeah, it's going to be a disappointment if they don't bring home some hardware this year.
Massively. Probably the most disappointing in the NBA ever. So.
Oh, okay. Whoa, I don't know about that. We're not doing that. But
I'm always saying that because people are saying it about the Lakers. So.
I mean, the fact that they make the play-in is crazy. Like that really is like. So I guess in that sense that they flopped epically, but again, worst ever. I have to go back in history, but there's no way this is the biggest disappointment ever.
Here's a better, I think, way that people could frame that question. And maybe I'm wrong, but could it be, are they the most talented team on paper to not make a playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's the same sort of thing.
But then you're not going as like disappointing. That could be because when you say disappointing, you take into account the expectation.
Oh no, it's disappointing regardless. Like there's no plan.
Right,
they didn't make the play-in game. They don't care how low you were on the Lakers going into the beginning of the season. I don't care how washed up you might have been, or certain people may have been right about what Russell Westbrook. None of us thought they were going to miss the play-in game. That was especially the craziest part is because LeBron is playing well. It's not even like LeBron just suddenly like Father Time caught up with him and he started being bad at basketball. He's playing great basketball right now. So it's pretty surreal to watch. But who's balling for you this week?
For me, it's actually going out to Yahoo Sports and this sports bettor who this article is from Sam Cooper back on September 9th. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody put $10,000 on the Lakers to miss the playoffs entirely. This is before the season started.
Yep.
The Lakers were one of the betting favorites to win the title at the time at plus 400, or they were one of the top. They were behind the Nets, who are plus 240. The odds of them not making the playoffs were plus 1,600. So obviously he put down 10,000. If that happened, he'd win $160,000. And guess what happened?
Got it. $160,000 cash it. That's a crazy bet. Like that's just. I mean,
that's like right now for just like. Well, I guess it's not really, but like I was looking it up to put money on Tiger Woods to win the Masters right now. If you put like $25 on it, you win like you win like $1,500.
I can't believe he's going to play. That's insane. He almost lost his leg. Not even like a little over a year ago.
Here's the thing, because it's so hilly there and all this stuff. My wife's big into golf and all that stuff, and she was saying the Masters in general is so hilly. It's hard to walk just for somebody that's like in shape. Mm-hmm. So she was saying like if he plays late night the first night and then early morning the next, that could be the like. The KO punch for him if he's trying to play the whole week.
To me, I mean, if he wins, it would be just unbelievable. It would be all-time unbelievable if he actually pulls this off.
That's the only reason I looked up the price or what the odds were on Tiger, because I was like, it's so hyped up to be like this storybook.
It felt surreal when he won it a couple of years ago. Like, it felt like that was the nightcap. If he comes back and wins that again, like, to me, I mean, the fact that he's playing is insane enough, and enough of a W enough for Tiger. But absolutely crazy. All right, so fallen for me this week is Lonzo Ball. Officially, the news out today from the NBA and from the Bulls that he's not going to play the rest of the season. I mean, really, it's just disappointing. I mean, that's all it comes down to for me is Lonzo was playing great basketball for Chicago when at the beginning of the season. It feels like every time that Lonzo Ball gets into a rhythm, he just has some sort of injury and misses time. Last season with New Orleans only played 55 games, got 35 this year with Chicago. The year before with New Orleans, 63, 47, 52. So again, unfortunately, I think this is a bit of a situation as well where, Lonzo Ball has dealt with a number of injuries. He's for sure talented, and I think was worth the investment without a doubt for Chicago. But the fact that, the guy is injury prone right now, and I think that's just unfortunate to see because he is effective when he plays.
It's just one of those things, you'll list him under those players that you kind of have a injury concern with. And you'll always have that when talking about them and their skill set. You're always going to be like, okay, they're great, but we got to make sure we get them on the court for 50 plus games, and then
and everything was going well. Like, that's the thing, career highs in field goal percentage and 3-point percentage and effective field goal percentage and free throw he was a little tiny bit lower in free throw percentage. But no, he was playing really well for the Bulls, and I mean, obviously, this is a Bulls team that is just banged up at this point. I mean, they're playing Boston as we speak, a really difficult go of it the rest of the way as well. And that's why I do think Toronto will jump them and hold on to that 5 spot. Chicago will drop to 6 then.
And worth mentioning, I saw the rumors going around about how, I think ESPN was talking about it, about certain teams in the East that haven't released their vaccinated players status, the 76ers being one of them. And something I saw posted today is that Thibault has been ruled out of the game, but they didn't really give a reason. So some people are saying, is it because he can't play in Toronto?
Sure, seems like it.
So there's that to take into account if they have to play the Raptors in the playoffs.
Well, and for anybody, I think I think the Bucks and Heat have come out and said they're fully vaccinated. So in their case, it wouldn't matter. The Celtics have said they're not. The Sixers have said they're not. Now, in the event that it's Thibault, it's weird because there's a Keith Pompey article floating around that because Thibault got COVID and missed time, but they said he had been vaccinated. And so that's weird. I don't know if he didn't get the booster. I don't know exactly what the eligibility is in terms of Toronto exactly, but it's kind of weird if he was vaccinated earlier that now he is suddenly ineligible to play in Toronto. But
yeah, well, and I know when did he get COVID? Not too long ago, right?
I think it was earlier in the year. It was when Omicron was going. So back in January, maybe end of the year in December.
Well, because I know from a booster standpoint, I thought there was something where you had to wait 90 days after if you get it. If you get COVID, you have to wait 90 days or something like that. So I don't know.
If it's a vaccine thing, though, I hope he gets it. At the end of the day, they're going to need everybody they can get against Toronto. Toronto's playing great basketball right now. You want to talk about a dangerous 5 seed.
It sounds bad, though. I don't... finding out that Thibault might be the one that can't play in Toronto... I was like, okay, well, at least it's not somebody that scores a lot for us.
I'm sure, but I want him playing. The Sixers need him in their starting lineup. They should want everybody should want to be 100%. And same thing with the Celtics. If the Celtics are missing a key rotation player in a series against Toronto, that might matter. Toronto's good.
It could. And from a Celtics standpoint, they're like, hey, let's just get to the second round when we might be able to get, all of our guys back from injury and then we're a full team again. And in theory, going to be cooking. So,
yeah. All right. Who's fallen for you?
Fallen for me is going to Klay Thompson, who was on Instagram Live boating around the other day talking about fans. And he said, but these new fans who come around and expect greatness, they weren't anywhere to be found prior. they can go away. We can forget those folks. They don't deserve to rep the Warriors. And then today he goes on Instagram because I'm sure the team told him, hey, they buy your merch. So he comes back and he says, we welcome all Warriors fans. I didn't mean to upset anybody. So Klay Thompson taking a massive L on social media for speaking.
People shouldn't have been upset about that. I get the point. He's saying if you bandwagon and you're gone now, then don't come around if they're good again. That's the thing, is where it's like, and there are plenty of people that bandwagon the Warriors. The Warriors are one of the most bandwagonable teams recently. You see this all the time. It happens in cycles with teams. But so I get what he's saying in the sense of, yeah, there is an element of Warriors fandom that was there the whole time. They watched the rise of Steph and him and Draymond and saw them all come together and form this championship team. You know, but I feel you. Like, if you start rooting for an NBA team, like, you can't just switch up because they're not a guarantee locked to win the title anymore the way they were for a couple of years. You got to ride it out all the time.
That's why I think if you're ever going to switch to a team that you're going to be a fan of, however it happens, try to do it when they're not good. So then nobody can try to claim that you're a bandwagon fan.
Oh, you don't think if you're just a casual NBA fan and you got no loyalty anywhere that you shouldn't just bandwagon? Why would you root for suffering?
Well, here's the thing, like, because then then it's not gonna feel good. Like, if you hop around, like, if you're suddenly a Suns fan this year, it's like, all right, well, you were a different fan last year. You're not gonna there's more satisfaction in being with a team that works for it and gets to it.
We should put our bet. It's not going to happen now, but at some point when the season slows down and we get closer to the summer, we should do our bandwagon power rankings of what teams are good to bandwagon. Because there's a lot of factors here. Because, like, with Memphis, for example, probably a good time to jump on the Memphis wagon if you're looking for a team. They look like they're going to be good for a while. They're fun. They've got an identity.
I'm claiming Grizzly fandom from back when we became Grizzlies fans for 2 weeks.
Oh, Grizzlies have always been our alternate squad. Like, I am for sure rooting for Memphis if I'm not rooting for the Sixers. Like, obviously, I'm always going to root for the Sixers as my number one squad. That's what it all comes down to. But like, I got a soft spot for Memphis for sure.
For a while, though, I was a Jazz fan, but they lost me because they weren't entertaining enough.
What? Oh, yeah, that's right. You were. I forgot about you being a West Coast Jazz fan.
Yeah.
Now they're fighting with each other, apparently, because Donovan Mitchell stat about him passing Rudy Gobert 2 times a game is wild. Mm-hmm. Like, that is one of the wildest. That was almost my fallen. But good Lord, that is going to be so toxic, and the articles are going to be so great when they blow up at the end of the season. Because here's the thing, like, the Jazz were already in a prove-it season with those two anyway. It's not probably going that far. Like, I don't think they're beating Memphis. I don't think they're beating Phoenix. And so at that point, best case scenario, you are exactly who you've been the past few years. Mm-hmm. We're gonna get some articles, let me tell you.
Well, and I bet you those articles will say this goes back to Gobert getting COVID, being the first person to shut down the NBA. It's like, that's how far these are gonna go back in terms of the investigation on why these guys don't get along. I'm sure that's what's gonna happen.
I think they got civil again for a little bit. And again, winning cures all. If they were winning basketball games, I don't think this would be an issue. But like, I think they know the pressure's on for them this year too. And if they don't, again, if they do well in the playoffs, if they reach the conference finals, maybe this is different. If they obviously were to go on a finals run, it would change everything. But I
just also find it so hard to believe that in the middle of a game, your upset level with somebody would hinder you from passing the ball if they're open or getting it down low to them or something. I don't know. Like, it just...
You say that, but they get the ball 2 times a game.
Well, that's what I mean. I get it. But like, from just like a heat of the moment thing, you see a guy open, you're not necessarily thinking of who it is. They're just open.
I just couldn't believe it was real. Like, I really, like, I thought for sure it had to be made up. I thought we were going to get like ball sacked sports or whatever, as they're getting everybody else now. But no, that's bananas. We'll see what happens there again come playoff time, but they're definitely not trending in the right direction. So with this being the last little bit here of the regular season, we want to get into some awards, make our picks. So we're not going to hit every single award. We're going to hit the big 6 at least: MVP, coach, 6th man, most improved, rookie of the year, and defensive player of the year. Some of them pretty contested, passionate to say the least. A couple of them not so much. I almost wanted to do this in like the obvious to not obvious order, but we're just going to kind of go from top to bottom. So,
well, we can start. We can start with the most obvious. MVP is Joel Embiid. Okay, let's move to the next one.
That's right. Completely skip it and lock it in. No, it's crazy, but I mean, we do.
How do you feel about the narrative that Embiid is now number 3 on this list compared to Jokic and Giannis?
I don't agree with the narrative that he's number 3. I think Joel is number 2 for sure, and I love Giannis. Like, to me, it's a 1, 2, 3. I do think Jokic is the MVP. I think Embiid is a very close second, and I think Giannis is third. And I think because it's different with Giannis, because Giannis, I believe he's the best player in the NBA. Like right now, I think Giannis is the guy. Number 1, you give me a game, that's who I'm taking. But if I'm putting together the value of work over the entire season and the number of other factors that go into MVP, I think you have to look at one of these two in terms of win totals. Because, I mean, look, Embiid did it without Ben Simmons for a large portion of the year. I know they got Harden, but that was late. He kept the Sixers afloat. He kept them competitive. The Nuggets we've been over with a zillion times. Like, they've done the whole season without Michael Porter Jr. for a large portion of it and without Jamal Murray. Jokic owns the advantage in basically every advanced stat that exists. They both have the narrative points, though. They both pass the eye test. I think Embiid, of course, always is a little bit better of a defender than Jokic is, but Jokic is by no means a net negative defender. And I think he's having one of the greatest offensive seasons from a center that we've ever seen. So it feels crazy. Like back-to-back is rarefied air. But I think without him playing with Murray and without him playing with Michael Porter Jr., it's just a little bit more difficult than Joel's route is. And Joel's been absolutely ridiculous this year. Like, I couldn't have more joy as a Sixers fan watching Joel Embiid night in and night out. And he really has, like, he deserves an MVP too. If he gets it, I'm not going to be upset about it, obviously. He's got an argument without a doubt. He's a clear number 2 to me. But I think as much as, like, Jokic he's the favorite to me. I think he should win the award.
So yeah, you said you thought it was Jokic and Embiid close, and then Giannis next. Mm-hmm. I think it's kind of Jokic by himself and Embiid and Giannis close. I think Jokic is what I was reading. He's 39 points away from becoming the first player in NBA history to get 2,000 points, 1,000 rebounds, 500 assists in a season. So that you'd imagine that happens. And like you were saying, he beats Embiid in every advanced category that you can look at, like that you'd bring up on like NBA.com, right? When you compare players, like when you look at it, it is all just Embiid or it is all just Jokic. And then I feel like once you get to Giannis and Embiid, things get a little tighter because of how like they're equal in rebounds per game. They're essentially equal in points per game. Giannis has a little more assists per game, but then you know what I mean? So like, that's where I feel like Giannis and Embiid, that's why I think they're pushing this. Giannis could potentially be number 2 is because it's close between those two. But
Giannis has also just had statement games too recently. Like Giannis down the stretch has had some big games.
Not at Embiid. He just had that, what was that, 40-pointer? He's had, 40 points, 40-point, 10 rebound games this season, which is like, tied for like the most. So I get it. But like my point is like, what's the point of debating second if they're going to be second,
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the way I view it too. And I mean, all 3 of these guys are going to be on the all NBA first team. I'm glad that they're not going to be weird about positions because Jokic and Embiid should be locks there. Yes. I think they would obviously thrive in each other's respective teams. If you put Jokic on the Sixers, put Embiid on the Nuggets, I think they would equally thrive in each other's roles. But yeah, I do. I have to, as much as my homer bias wants Joel to win it, I've got to give it to Jokic. I think he's going back to back here. All right, it's Coach of the Year. Who you got?
Oh, Coach of the Year. So, I mean, here's my thinking. I feel like it should be Jenkins for the Memphis Grizzlies.
Okay.
Mainly because of how much they've exceeded expectation. This will kind of give away my most improved player a little bit, but I feel like the Grizzlies have 2 guys on that list for most improved. He's only in his 3rd season as the coach. They're insanely improved. He has 2 guys just absolutely cooking right now. He's got Jaren Jackson Jr., who's in the running for Defensive Player of the Year. So I feel like it's him. Now, the other side of me wants to say Monty Williams just because they're the best damn team in the NBA. So let's just close the book on it, you know? And I feel like can we really skunk him again for that?
I don't think you can skunk him, and that's why he's my pick. And Jenkins is my two, for the record. Like, Taylor Jenkins absolutely deserves to be in that conversation. I think it's tough with my 3 spot. I keep going back and forth with 3 between Mike Malone and what he's been able to do in Denver, kind of, again, with Jokic and with all those guys being out. And then Eric Spoelstra as well. I mean, number 1 team in the Eastern Conference, just constantly getting the best out of everybody. It feels like they've had a number of injuries that they've been able to play through. Jimmy Butler's been hurt. Bam Adebayo's been hurt.
I think the Celtics could be an argument.
Oh,
right?
Udoka, absolutely. The way they turn it around, 100%. Definitely should get some votes and some consideration as well. But no, I'm going with Monty Williams, man. They won the most games in the NBA by far. Again, well over 60. And for them to be looking this impressive, because again, it's really hard to get back to the finals. Like, I say this all the time, but LeBron made it look so easy for so many years. The fact that they're this motivated in a year where, you're coming off being up 2-0 in the finals, looking for your first championship in franchise history, and you blow that lead, you blow the next 4 games and end up losing that, have to sit with that for an entire summer, for you to come back then and have that mental fortitude and set the franchise record for number of wins, to keep winning without Chris Paul, to keep winning when Devin Booker had COVID for a little bit. I got to go with Monty Williams. Don't
forget contract situations with a lot of players.
Ayton's not being settled. They settled Mikal Bridges, but DeAndre Ayton again, getting him motivated again. You're absolutely right. So I've got Taylor Jenkins number 2. I think he's done a great job in Memphis. Deserves all the credit for everything that you said, all the improvements for them taking the lead. Definitely, again, a solid number 2. Should get some mention, but I'm going to go with Monty Williams here. I think he's the guy. All right, so for 6th man of the year, I think this is one of the easier awards, right? It's got to be Tyler Hero. We're not going to see any argument here, are we?
No doubt. Tyler Hero, in my opinion, I mean, he started in fewer than 20 games, and he's probably going to average over 20 points per game. I mean, we brought him up when we debated the redraft, whether he would go over Zion and the injury concerns and all that stuff. He's shooting 39% from 3 on 3-pointers. And by the way, this is just way off the cuff, I saw that Luke Kennard has the best 3-point shooting percentage in the NBA. And I was like, dope, because wasn't Luke who we saw in Orlando Summer League?
Yeah, he was one of the players for sure, back when he was with Detroit. Yeah. So I was like, oh, that's kind of cool to see that glow up in a way. But yeah, Tyler Hero, 6th man of the year for sure. Key part of Miami. I don't feel like you need to make much more of an argument after that. Yeah, I mean, just the fact that he's averaging 20 off the bench. He leads 3rd in the Heat in assist percentage. I think the way that, again, just when they need a bucket, and the way that Miami's bench units have been just blowing teams out of the water. Again, I think their top bench unit net rating is like a +10 or something like that. Just outrageous. So yeah, I think Tyler Hero's the clear choice here. I mean, there are a couple guys that you could maybe put in the conversation that would be right there with Hero. I mean, a couple guys on the Hornets. Emmanuel Quickley's been really good for the Knicks. But yeah, I think I'm pretty sold on Tyler Hero there. I think that's probably the easiest one out of all of them, honestly.
Yeah, and then I think, when you go over to most improved, I feel like the very obvious one, the one that everybody's probably going to most likely do, is Ja Moran.
Yeah, absolutely.
Going from 19 points per game to 26 points per game. His 3-point percentage went up to 34 from 3. His effective field goal went up to 53%. His offensive rating went from a 108 to 115. His offensive box plus minus went from a 1.3 to a 6.2. They're a plus 4.4 with him on the court now, and he played 56 games. Now, I feel like there is a really good argument to say his teammate should be considered for most improved, and that's Desmond Bane. Now, go ahead.
Oh, I was agreeing with you. I was going to say, make your Desmond Bane argument.
Yeah, so from a similar standpoint, right, went from 9 points per game to 18 points per game. went from like half a steal a game to 1.2 per game. His offensive rating in a similar way from Jaws went from a 115 to a 118. He went from a negative 0.6 offensive box plus minus to a 2.5. And they're actually a plus 7.4 with him on the court. And then I think if you had to pin the teammates against each other, you would say Desmond has been available for more games than Ja Morant has, because Ja obviously went through the injury. So Desmond's played 74 games with him compared to Ja Morant's 56. I feel like while the numbers aren't as big and flashy and as eye popping and catching as what Ja Morant's doing, Desmond definitely has a really good argument to get it.
He does. There are a lot of guys who have, like, I think Ja is the clear cut for all the reasons you just said. I think he is the number one guy here without a doubt. Just the fact that he's the engine to the Grizzlies' improvement.
Sure.
I know everyone's going to go, oh, well, they won all those games without him, but like, no, Ja Morant's the guy.
And Desmond's argument to that is when he was out, he was the guy.
Right.
He really stepped into that role.
A lot of honorable mentions from me. Desmond Bane, like you mentioned. I think Jordan Poole is worth mentioning. He's been great. I think Miles Bridges has been great and gotten a lot better for the Hornets. I think Darius Garland is another one, kind of stepping up and being the lead star there in Cleveland. I think he should kind of merit some mention as well. But yeah, I think this is a clear choice for Ja Morant for me. I think he's going to win this award really without it being too close.
Okay. And I agree with you. I just wish, but I'm wondering, and I think the reason I bring it up is I wonder is it way closer than we think it is? And we're just not going to look deep into the stats because it's Ja Morant.
I mean, who do you think would give him the most push, I guess, out of all those guys?
I think Desmond Bane is the one that would give him the most push.
Oh, see, I disagree with that. I think, maybe it's a victim of cannibalization a little bit, but I don't think he stands out the way that, Jordan Poole played a ton of key minutes for the Warriors this year. Darius Garland is the guy. Like, he's Cleveland's version of Ja Morant, almost, if you will, in the sense that his emergence has kind of been a big key to their success. So maybe it's closer on that front. I don't think Desmond Bane, I think he's maybe in the top 5, but I think Miles Bridges probably even finishes ahead of Desmond Bane in voting for most improved. And I think that's just, again, a victim maybe of being on the same team with Ja Morant. All right, defensive player of the year for me. This is a lot closer. Rudy Gobert has dominated this award historically. Draymond Green is another one who has been a big award winner here as well. I'm going to go with Giannis, though. I really think his versatility, the way that he closes out games, the way that he just seemingly, whether it was that Embiid block from a couple weeks ago on the episode, or even going back to that block against Phoenix in the finals last year, it just feels like his versatility stands out to me. And I think that the Bucks have been an excellent defensive team all year, and he's the biggest part of that. I mean, they're 27. The Bucks are allowing 27% of shots at the rim with Giannis on the floor, and their overall efficiency plummets by 7% as well. It feels like it's the year. Rudy again is close. Marcus Smart has a really good argument, but I'm going to go with Giannis here.
Yeah, you kind of said who I was thinking, Marcus Smart. We kind of said, with Williams going down, we talked about how the Celtics had one of the best defenses in the league. Obviously, Marcus Smart is a big part of that as well, having to guard the guards of the team they're going against. I also think Bam has an argument there. I would say those two are in my list of two, and from the Caesars Sportsbook, those two right now at least have the best odds of winning that.
Giannis and Bam do?
Marcus Smart and Bam. Giannis is a plus 1,600. Mikal Bridges is actually number 3. Rudy Gobert is 4. Jaren Jackson Jr. is 5.
Okay, I was going to ask where Jaren Jackson came in because he's another one that I think should be in the conversation as well. By the way, broke Pau Gasol's record for Grizzlies blocks in a season.
Robert Williams is still on that list as well, right
Yeah.
behind Giannis, but his odds are pretty high up now.
Well, again, because of the injury, but it feels like the Celtics starting slow. If the Celtics have been playing like this the whole season, I feel like he'd be in that conversation a lot
Give it
higher.
to him anyway.
Smart gets a lot of the attention, but Rob Williams has been just as important as Marcus Smart, in my opinion.
Well, and we talked about it. They essentially moved him to like the NFL's version of a safety. They had him sit back on the pick and rolls and just pick up the defender.
Right, exactly. And last but not least is Rookie of the Year. This, to me, is one of the more contentious ones, if not the most contentious one. I'm going with Evan Mobley. Mobley did it over the course of the season. Obviously, Cleveland, despite them being down a little bit here, Mobley just defensively and the amount offensively that he took on, the consistency of it over the 82-game season. Now, I think Cade Cunningham is the best prospect out of this draft. Like, wow, he has turned it on and shown it. And I think the fact that he's made a push like this is a pretty big testament to how good he's going to be, how much stronger Detroit has looked here in the second half of the season. I mean, they look a far cry from the worst team in the NBA that they were at one point. Cade definitely getting acclimated a little bit. I've got Scotty Barnes at 3. He's right there again, playing meaningful minutes for the Raptors, a large part of their playoff push. I think all these guys are going to be great. Franz Wagner deserves a lot of credit as well. I think Jalen Green rising up the ranks late, really put on a scoring outburst here for the Rockets. But to me, I got to go again, 82-game season. I think Cade will be better long term, but I got to give credit to Evan Mobley. I think he deserves the award.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you, even though his, like if you just look at the points per game, there's guys that are averaging more than him. But to your point, I like Scotty Barnes too. So like for me, if I were to give a 3, it'd be Evan Mobley, Scotty Barnes, and Cade, right there as the nod to Cade as being, down the line, probably the best option, like you were saying. So, but I think, when you look at it with the Cavs and the Raptors and what they did this year and where they've been and how important those guys were for them, I think that's a big part of it too.
Yeah, the Raptors were in a quote-unquote rebuilding year. It's like, Scotty Barnes is a big part of them, again, playing some of the best basketball of their season. They're going to be a nightmare for whoever they play in the first round. In the event of not to continue to be a Sixers downer on this podcast, I'm going from an optimist to a downer again, but there are scenarios where I see them losing that series to Toronto. I'm not saying it's a lock, but that's a 6 or 7 game series. Again, with Boston and Milwaukee, I think they beat Toronto, but Toronto's going to push the hell out of them. Like, I think they're taking anybody they play to 6 at least in that first round.
Dude, playing against Toronto, if we go into game 7, I'm going to be having flashbacks of that shot.
Well, and here's the other reality is that I trust Nick Nurse as a coach way more than I trust Doc Rivers. Doc Rivers continues to play DeAndre Jordan for some inexplicable reason, despite Charles Bassey winning G League Player of the Year, despite Paul Reed being on the bench. Doc Rivers is just inexplicably awful.
You saw those reports of him interested in other teams. I said, bye.
See ya. Please take him. It'd be hilarious if he goes to the Lakers. It would be just all-time hilarious if he ends up on the Lakers somehow. It's like, what's the worst? Like, what would be the worst possible outcome after this season? It'd be like firing Frank Vogel and hiring Doc Rivers.
Well, but to that, from a Doc standpoint, those lineups that you're going to be running out with Westbrook, AD, and LeBron are kind of set it and forget it lineups. Like, you can't really do much with it. So
yeah, you would say that. You would think that. He'll find some random washed-up backup center to play for 19 minutes a game, and then just give no shot to anyone. Every time. It is unbelievable. Every lead the Sixers have, DeAndre Jordan goes on the floor, and the team goes on like a 12-0 run, and Doc calls timeout and is wondering, like, what happened? What possibly changed?
Like, oh, well, I could tell you.
What's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results? Good Lord. Thank you, everybody, for listening to this episode of the Drive and Dish NBA podcast. We appreciate you guys. As always, leave us a review on iTunes, good or bad. We will read them on the podcast. Anywhere you can find a podcast. Oh, you're laughing. Anywhere you can find a podcast, you can find us. What's happening?
The freaking, you see our logo right now in the middle of our screen?
Yeah.
This is for anybody listening to the podcast. I apologize. It was like slightly off to the right, like right here. It is uncentered for the entire hour podcast. So I'm like, oh my God, if someone has OCD.
Wait, really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I definitely thought it was in the middle the whole time, which shows how much I was paying attention to it. I like that logo. That's the best logo we have, in my opinion. We've got a couple, but that is my favorite. And again, be subscriber 36 are Rasheed Wallace or potential Defensive Player of the Year Marcus Smart on the subscribers. It's a good time. You can watch the podcast there. We're going to be back this weekend. We're recording this on Wednesday, April 6th. We're going to be back in a couple days with another episode as well. Kind of previewing the play-in games and a little bit more of the first round. Play-in games, there'll be more X's and O's because it is kind of set at this point. Like the Western Conference 9 and 10 is set. It's just the East. We're going to see what happens with the standings.
Well, we have to do once we have it all locked, we have to do our brackets. We have to make our brackets.
100%.
And do that. So.
For play-in in the East, by the way, as of recording this, the Knicks are actually up 14 on the Nets right now in the third quarter. So that'd be a big one if the Nets lose because Atlanta is winning, albeit by 2 points right now over the Wizards at half. Atlanta would jump Brooklyn 2-8, putting Brooklyn in a potential crash course with Charlotte in a one-or-done playoff situation. Look, as much flack as the Lakers are getting, if Brooklyn goes out in the playoffs,
it's even worse.
Listen, we're going to have some conversations. Ben Simmons not playing for the rest of the regular season too is absolutely stunning. Legitimately, that's not even attempted shade from us. That's actually surprising to me.
That's shade from me.
It might be a little bit, but we'll get back to that again next time. We'll have a whole lot more to talk about. But in the meantime, again, watch the podcast on YouTube, and we appreciate y'all.